Welcome everyone to our webinar today, Prevent Child Injury, Putting It into Practice, presented by Oxford County Public Health with technology support from the Ontario Neurotrauma Foundation. My name is Lindsay Toth and I am a project coordinator at the Ontario Neurotrauma Foundation. Before we begin, I'm going to give you a quick rundown on the Level 3 web meeting system. This webinar technology consists of two parts. The audio is provided through a telephone conference line, and the visuals are provided through a web platform. The phone number for the conference line and the link for the web platform were sent to you by email after you registered for the webinar with Level 3. If you have questions about the technology at any time during this presentation, please type them into the chat box, located on the left-hand side of your screen. Alternatively, you can send me an email to lindsay@ons.org. I will work with you to resolve technical issues as soon as possible. This webinar will contain an opportunity for discussion during a question and answer period at the end. If you have topic-related questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box. During the Q&A, I will read those questions aloud to the presenter. If you would prefer to ask your question over the phone, you may unmute your line by dialing *7 when you're prompted. When you're finished, please dial *6 to remute your line and help us keep background noise down. This webinar is being recorded. The recording and the slide deck will be distributed by email after the webinar. I would now like to introduce our two speakers for today. Lorna Boratto is a recently retired public health nurse who has worked in injury prevention for 20 years and has been on the Child Injury LDCP team. Kelly Vanderhoeven has worked at Oxford County Public Health for 12 years. She has worked in many areas in health promotion, and she now covers physical activity promotion and injury prevention. She currently co-chairs the Ontario Childhood Injury Prevention Committee that continues to work on knowledge exchange of the what, so what, now what messages. Kelly is also a mother of Danika, who is 4, and Clara, who is 2. Clara is in the target population range of 0 to 36 months for this project and is a running, walking, climbing risk taker in every way. So this project truly impacts her on a personal level as well. All right, our two presenters, you may now unmute your phone lines by dialing *7 and take it away.
Thanks, Lindsay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. I wasn't sure whether I would use the speaker or the headset. My name's Kelly Vanderhoeven, and I will be starting the presentation today. So we thought we'd open up with just a little icebreaker. I wanted everybody to just think to yourself, or you can type in the chat box if you'd like. What have you done in your past that you believe is a risky behavior? So I know for myself, years ago, I was on vacation in Holland, and I rode a bike helmet, for an example. So, okay, people might be having trouble hearing me, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move closer to my speaker so that I'm making sure that people can hear me. So the question was just to think to yourself, what have you done in your past that you believe is a risky behavior? Just to set our brains thinking about risky activities. So I have people saying, as a child, I climbed on top of a small cupboard that was not stable, so fell down and hurt myself. And another person said, stayed alone at a distance cottage with my 5 children with no one around. That's a good one too. So tobogganing and skiing without a helmet. So it's kind of like back then things were kind of the way how they were, and then things have changed a little bit, and they are the way how they are now. I have some bungee jumping and riding a bike without a helmet. So yeah, lots of risky activities coming through the chat box now. But So I'm just going to let everybody know kind of the objectives that Lorna and I hope to cover today. So to give an, my apologies. The objectives we hope to cover is to give an overview of injury prevention theory and models, and the reasons injury prevention is a public health priority, and to introduce the research-based resources that were developed by the LDCP, the Adapting Alberta's A Million Messages for Implementation in Ontario's Health and Social Service Systems, and also to facilitate the implementation for you of these injury prevention resources into your everyday practice. So hopefully everyone's at the right spot. So we wanted to thank our funders, Public Health Ontario and the Ontario Neurotrauma Foundation, and ONF is providing our webinar today, so thank you, Lindsay, and everybody there. And as well, Oxford County Public Health, where I work, that they have provided the project printing, admin support, EPI support, lots of support. So now we'll enter into the content of the presentation. And so in Ontario, in 2015, 25 children aged 0 to 14 years old are hospitalized, and over 750 are in emergency department visits, and that's every day. Whereas also in Ontario, 2015 stat is children 0 to 4 had the second highest emergency department rate and highest hospitalization rates due to injury. And then of those, the leading causes of injury in children 0 to 4 were falls, poisoning, and burns and scalds. And that's why our project targets those areas. So all the research has been done for you. So injury also is the largest health problem that has the greatest potential of being prevented through the provision of safe, healthy environments. And furthermore, it is estimated that every month, 25 children die from injury in Canada, so across Canada, which is equivalent to one classroom of children dying per month. And then investing in prevention strategies would decrease the overall cost of injuries. And for example, every dollar spent on prevention, education by pediatricians saves $10 in injury costs. So it is a worthwhile thing to tackle. And so, falls were the leading cause of injury-related emergency department and hospitalizations over both poisonings and scalds and burns in 2015 for 0 to 4-year-olds. And 40% of falls happen at home. And the common types of falls in the home are from furniture, slips and trips, and falling on stairs. So before I go any farther, I do want to say that all those involved in the project recognize the importance of play. Play is an important part of early child development, and through play, children develop their fine and gross motor skills, language skills through interactions with other children, adults, social and emotional skills. And the aim of promoting child safety is not to reduce children's physical activity or to prevent them from exploring their environment due to the fear of them getting hurt. Therefore, injury prevention efforts are focused on recognizing and reducing the risks for serious injuries. So, due to falls, burns, scalds, and poisoning, for an example, so the child can be kept safe during play and any other situation. And so, there are many definitions for physical literacy, but this one is from PHE Canada, and I'll make the connection to this presentation for you in a few slides. But just so people are aware of it, physical literacy is individuals who are physically literate move with individuals who are physically literate move with competence and confidence in a wide variety of physical activities in multiple environments that benefit the healthy development of the whole person. I see a louder, please, and I'm going to put my headset on to make sure that I am getting lots of volume for you. Is that better for folks?
That sounds
Much
a lot
better.
more clear and loud on my end.
Wonderful. My apologies. Okay, so moving forward, physical literacy is important to healthy child development as it lays a foundation for them to lead a healthy, active life. Much like literacy is supported by a language-rich environment, the development of physical literacy is supported by a movement-rich environment that helps children acquire fundamental movement skills like run, jump, hop, and throw, while active play can be child-led. Adult feedback and support is necessary to create a quality physical literacy experience that emphasizes basic skill development and builds confidence within the child. So it is built through practice and repetition until the skill is mastered. And so the picture on this slide shows how it all kind of works. So physical literacy, meaning having and developing the movement skills, the confidence, and the motivation to be active for life. So that's in that one wheel. And it is moved with and developed through active play and ultimately improves feelings of belonging, well-being, engagement, and expression. And those four foundational conditions are in the How Does Learning Happen? Ontario's pedagogy for the early years, as far as the foundations are ways of being, are a vision for all children's future potential and a view that what they should experience each and every day so that they flourish. So an example just of physical literacy, just so everybody's understanding it. So if you never learn one skill of how to swim, for an example, you will never do water sports or anything on a boat or on water for fear of drowning or that kind of thing for the rest of your life, unless you build the skill later in life. Okay, this next slide, it's a very busy slide, sorry about that, but I find it helps create a visual for when the fundamental movement skills should be developed for a child. And all children develop at their own pace, so this is just a guide for you to kind of see when that develops. And so on the left-hand side, many of the movement skills are listed, and you can see them: walking, running, balance, etc. And then on the top, it shows the different age level of the child, from 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, up to 7-year-old. And the main movement skills are all best learned before the age of 6, making early years a critical window of opportunity to work on physical literacy. Children should be exposed to a wide range of fundamental movement skills in a wide range of settings, including on land, on ice, snow, in water, and in the air. So you'll see the colors on the chart, and the blue there is the blue highlights when the body is not mature enough for that skill. The green is the normal onset of that skill. The yellow is the best time to teach and practice the skill. And the red is that there could be an intervention program needed if that skill is not learned. So that before 6, and you can just kind of see where kids are really working hard to develop their skills. And we brought up the connection to physical literacy, learned through active play here, so that you have a sense that children are in the early years are still working on their movement skills, and naturally they fall and get bumps and bruises along the way. And so risky play now. So what is risky play? It is a thrilling and exciting play that can include the possibility of physical injury. And so there's elements of risky play. And the elements of risky play include
great heights. So when kids climb up on things like climbers, furniture, there's a fear of falling. Kind of that last slide where that was actually Clara climbing up the cabinet there, so testing her abilities there. And high speed, so when a child challenges themselves by pedaling fast or running fast to challenge themselves. Dangerous tools, where they use hammers and nails, and they're dangerous when children are left to these with no supervision or instruction. But there's outdoor daycares in Norway and other places where children are shown how to use these tools to build and create things with their natural environment. And so, but also there's dangerous elements. So like fire, for example, the sparkler, this is my older daughter Danika in this picture. How like a sparkler would be one fire, roasting marshmallows by a campfire, or playing by water, for an example. Get lost is another element of risky play where there's a potential for disappearing or getting lost. And I don't mean opening up the front door and letting your child wander off, but you let children feel that they are alone to explore their environment. So you'd obviously be somewhere supervising, but it just allows them that element of exploring. And Brandy Tenenbaum, I heard her speak a little while ago, and she had mentioned another category that we didn't list in the slides, but it's just the rough and tumble play. And basically, ultimately, all of these elements of risky play, they have a possibility where there's an outcome of physical injury. And so children progressively encounter risky play and seek out thrills in a gradual manner, which allows them the time to master the challenges involved. And in this way, their subjective perception of risk becomes more realistic. And through risky play, children prepare for handling real risks and dangers. So it's a risk management exercise. And so the benefits of risky play, better risk detection and awareness and management skills, improve motor and spatial skills, increase self-esteem, more independence, and better conflict resolution skills. Rehearse handling real-life situations through risky play to discover for themselves what is safe or not. And later on in life, their ability to negotiate decisions about substance use, relationships, and sexual behavior during adolescence. I think I might have skipped a slide here. I'm just going to skip back. So risky play, the primary motivation is pleasant emotions as they gain higher levels of arousal and master risks. Risk-taking in play includes both fear and excitement. So I know my daughter, Clara, is quite proud of herself when she climbs furniture. She shouldn't, to a new level, but she has this massive grin on her face. So I know she's very proud of herself and feels good about it. So she has climbed to a higher level, and she succeeded without injury. So we're both filled with fear and excitement in those moments. So sorry I did those out of order, everyone. So we have the antiphobic effect. Research suggests antiphobic effect develops with the exposure to typical anxiety eliciting stimuli and context in combination with positive emotions, so the thrills, in relatively safe situations. So children learn to cope with and no longer fear potentially dangerous situations, which is a good thing. This picture shows a climber that was built in with the intention to allow kids to safely take personal risks. Kids can climb up 2 steps and jump off, or they can climb up 5 steps and jump off, whatever they feel is safe for them. And so this risk versus hazard. Confusing risk with hazard has made it more challenging to recognize the benefits of risk. Evidence states that voluntary risk-taking, including among children, suggests that it is normal, pervasive, and developmentally necessary. So risk is something that you can judge. How high can you climb? Or from what height can you jump? And a hazard is something you cannot judge, such as a worn or broken equipment. This cannot be judged by a child, so this is something that should be avoided by good management practices and kind of needs adult-led help. And then, so the challenge is mitigation for injury, but also optimal child development. My apologies. I've done it again. My apologies. Okay, so what we have here is it's a fine balance between safety and challenge. Children should be able to engage in challenging play, adjusted to each individual's sense of risk and urge for exhilaration. And preschool staff, teachers, and parents, etc., should be encouraged to support and inspire this. And so here's the challenge, is the mitigation for injury, but also optimal child development through exposure to age-appropriate risky play in a hazard-free space. So between 2007 up to 2012, there's been an 8% increase in playground injuries. So it makes us think, what's the possibility, is it a possibility that our safest efforts might themselves be leading to this upswing in injuries? Could this be through children using standardized playgrounds in unsafe ways to experience the risk they crave? Or is it through producing a generation of children with more limited risk management skills, limited physical strength, or cognitive flexibility? So an injury, what is an injury? An injury is defined as a body lesion at the organic level resulting from an acute injury or to energy, an acute exposure to energy, in amounts that exceed the threshold of physiological tolerance. In some cases, the injury results from insufficiency of a vital element. So, injuries can be intentional or unintentional, depending on intent to cause harm. Intentional injuries include actions such as self-harm, suicide, assault, homicide, or an abuse. And unintentional injuries can include falls, poisoning, burns, scalds, motor vehicle crashes, and drowning. And the project we'll be presenting on today focuses on unintentional injuries. So injuries occur in young children as they develop and explore their surroundings. Their bones, muscles, vision, and balance are still developing. They are learning new skills at the same time. They don't have the risk management skills that adults have to judge whether or not their activities are safe. And so as indicated earlier, an injury is defined as a body lesion at the organic level resulting from an acute exposure to energy in the amounts that exceed the threshold of physiological tolerance. In some cases, result from an insufficiency of a vital element. So the energies that can cause injury are mechanical, like a fall, or thermal, like fire or heat, and electrical would be outlets or anything that would create an electric shock. Chemical would be cleaning supplies, acid on the skin, a poisoning type thing. Radiation would be nuclear radiation from a radiation nuclear plant. And then also the decrease or lack of a vital element would be heat and or oxygen. So heat would be hypothermia, and oxygen, the lack of, would be suffocation. And so injuries are injuries, and they are not accidents. And sometimes people call them accidents, but they surely are not, and I think the people on the line know that. Most injuries are due to circumstances that are predictable and preventable, which is a wonderful opportunity for us to do our work at the prevention level. So how do we prevent injury? And so we have primary prevention, where we prevent the injury-causing event from occurring, which would be, for an example, a fire, ingestion of poison, or a car crash or fall. And then the secondary prevention, that is to minimize the bodily harm if an event should take place. So it's the harm reduction model. So if an injury-causing event has occurred, there is things you can do to mitigate the level of injury. So like wearing a seatbelt or wearing a bike helmet. And then the tertiary prevention is to reduce further consequences of injury. So like an immediate response and treatment at the scene of an injury, or early rehab or specialized rehab. And and I'm at the end of where I'm going to cover here this morning for you, and I'm going to turn it over to Lorna. And so just give us a moment. We're going to switch spots here. One sec.
Hello, Lorna is here. And first of all, before I go on, I need to say that I have developed a horrible cough, and so you may find that there are some periods of silence where I've put the phone on mute so I'm not coughing in everybody's ears. So my apologies for that. So we've just looked at the primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention of injuries. Hayden, who I believe is from Winnipeg, put together a matrix to further examine that whole process of injury and injury prevention. It helps us to focus on the different factors that can increase the likelihood of injury and the long-term effects of that injury. It looks more at the individual and helps us to determine prevention strategies at all three levels. This is the matrix, and we look at, first of all, the pre-event is looking at the situation prior to the occurrence of an event, and it's the time when preventative measures can be put in place. So this is the time for primary prevention. The event is the occurrence of the injury-causing incident, so that could be the car crash or the fall. And to mitigate some of the degree of injury would be wearing a seatbelt or having a bike helmet. Post-event is the treatment following the event, and that is everything from immediate emergency care right through to rehabilitation. The cause of the host, if we look across the top of the chart, the host is the person that may be injured or is injured. The cause of the injury is the energy that is involved and the circumstances for the release of that energy, or the lack of an element, heat or oxygen. The physical environment includes the actual physical surroundings and the mechanisms that impact the event. And the social environment includes attitude, affordability, culture, etc., that may impact the possibility that an event occurring and the severity of that event. This also includes the social determinants of health. I have put together here an example of a Hayden's matrix. I've adapted this from one that Parachute did and is on their website, so you can have a sense of what is involved here. First of all, when we look at the pre-event component, and we're going to be looking at scalds. So this is a 1-year-old child, and the pre-event, the question is, will the scald occur? What are the circumstances that can increase the risk for a scald occurring? And first of all, we look at the child. It's a year-old child, so what is the age and mobility of that child? How active does that child move? How quickly? How curious? And does the child understand the dangers? Now, a 1-year-old child, we can almost automatically say that that child does not understand the dangers that are involved in the possibility of being scalded. The cause of the injury is the thermal energy. So the energy that's involved is heat. And the hazards in the home, what are the hazards in the home that can increase the cause of the scald? So for example, hot tap water. Is the water temperature in the water heater down to a level that would not cause scalds if a child should be turned it on? The kettle, are the cords hanging down, or pot handles hanging over the edge of the stove? That somebody is sitting and drinking a very hot drink while holding a child. These are different things that could cause a scald injury. If we look at the physical environment, it's the temperature of the hot tap water and how long it takes to get hot. Are there anti-scald devices involved in the taps or on the shower head? And for the case of hot drinks, are there safety lids on the drinks to prevent a spillage? And for another one would be a cordless kettle. Then we look at the social environment. What's the caregiver's attitude to safety and supervision? Is there awareness of the water temperature and the risk of scald if the water temperature is high? Does the person know how to turn down the water temperature on the hot water heater? An awareness of a child's ability to understand danger and the child's developmental skills. So if we look if an event should occur, it's again, we're looking at the host as the child. So the age and health of the child can affect the impact of the event, and the physical size of the child, and what clothing is the child wearing, because if there's more clothing diaper, less chance of severe scald occurring. The cause of the injury is how hot the water is and how long has the child been exposed to that hot element. The physical environment, how easy to turn the water on, the ability to get away from hot water. So for example, if a child is put in a hot tub, can the child get away from that water, or is dependent on an adult taking the child out? And the social environment, how close is the child to the area where they could be scalded, and know what to do to decrease the effect of the burn? And how close is the caregiver to take the child away from that environment, that scalding environment? So then, So then when we look at the post-event, that is the response immediately after. And again, the age and health of the child impacts all three areas, and the physical size of the child. Also, where is the on the body the burn or the scald? The cause of the injury is, again, we're looking at the removal of hot clothing, and the burn, and is the burn area run under the water immediately. The physical environment includes how close they are to medical care and the emergency response time, access to a telephone to be able to call for emergency care, and access to acute care. How far away are you from a hospital? And the social environment includes the caregiver's ability to do first aid and to follow through on treatment instructions, and the medical staff knowledge of the treatment of scalds in children. So this is an example of how the Hayden's matrix can be used to look at all the areas of risk and what is involved or can be involved in an injury, right through from the prevention from the time when it hasn't occurred right through to after the fact that it has occurred. And you can see where there are different points where changes can be made to decrease the risks for the event occurring and decrease the risk of severe injury if an event should occur. And this can be done for falls, for poisoning, for burns, and any number of things, and helps us to focus on injury and what we can do here. So Hayden has set up a number of countermeasures that can be used to look at the prevention for injury and the risks of, and he has 10 of them. So prevent the creation of a hazard, reduce the amount of the hazard, prevent the release of a hazard that already exists, and modify the rate of spatial distribution to the hazard, and separate in time or space the hazard from that which is to be protected. So all 5 of these are all in the pre-event stage. This is all part of primary prevention. And when we're looking at the word hazard here. What is the hazard that can be involved, and what can we do to, first of all, prevent the creation of it, reduce the amount of it, that if it already existed, it doesn't release, to modify how close we are to the hazard, and to separate us in time and space. To carry on to the rest of them, separate the hazard from that which is to be protected by a material barrier. Modify the relevant qualities of the hazard. So these 2 are both in the pre-event stage. What can be done to decrease that potential hazard to create a injury situation? And we look at number 7, make sure what is to be protected is more resistant to damage from the hazard. And so that is, if an event should occur, what can be done to protect the host as much as we can from injury or the severity of the injury. And this is where we come into wearing helmets, buckling up, wearing safety gear, this sort of thing, to make them more resistant to a severe injury. And then the last 2, begin to counter the damage already done by the hazard, and stabilize, repair, and rehabilitate the object of the damage. And both of these are in the post-event stage. What can be done to decrease the impact of the injury that has occurred through medical care and rehabilitation? So when we look at injury prevention, the 3 E's are education, enforcement, and engineering. Very similar to much of what we do in health promotion in so many different areas. As we had said earlier, the locally driven collaborative project that was done was looked at how injury prevention messaging can be delivered to caregivers and families of young children. And this is the whole program that they have come up with this research. It's what, so what, now what. Back in the spring, I presented a webinar on this whole project and delivered what was done right from the very beginning, the research process, the focus groups, the messaging development, and so on that was done with this. That webinar has been posted, and at the end of this I'll show you where it is. So I don't want to completely repeat what I have already done, but I just wanted to mention one part of this, and this was the messaging development strategy. So when they put together the messaging, they wanted to look through the literature. There was an environmental scan, and they wanted to develop messages that had clear language, were action-oriented, positively framed, and that there were no more than 5 messages for one subject. So at the end of the day, they developed 39 injury prevention messages. The target group is 0 to 36 months of age. And that time frame in terms of age is primarily due to the scope and funding of the project. Initially, we started to look at 0 to 6, but due to time and funding restraints, that was whittled down to 0 to 36 months. As Kelly had indicated earlier, it had been determined that the three primary causes of injuries are falls, scalds and burns, and poisoning. And so that's what the focus of the messages are. And they wanted to use a problem-solving approach. So they came up with anticipatory guidance frame messages. What can my child do now? Children are continuously changing and developing new skills. Being able to recognize what they can do based on their stage of development is important when preventing any injury. Therefore, the what question is designed to prompt the parent caregiver to first consider what activities their child can do. For example, they identify that their child is starting to roll around. So what can hurt my child? As their child develops new motor skills, the risk for injuries change. Being able to identify potential dangers allows them to think ahead and assess their home environment for any possible risks that can affect their child in relation to their newly developed skill. Therefore, the so what question is designed to prompt parents, caregivers to explore and identify home hazards. For example, they identify that their child is now at risk for falling from places like change tables and couches because they are starting to roll around. Now, what can I do to keep my child safe? After new dangers have been identified, it is now time to develop a plan to keep their child safe. Knowing how to prevent these injuries before they happen is the most important step. Therefore, the now what question is designed to help parents and caregivers find ways to prevent injuries based on their child's skills and risks. For example, since their child is at risk for falls, placing a hand on the child while they are on a high surface such as a change table, bed, or couch keeps them from falling off. The three measures of readability were used. On an average, it was determined that the messages were written between a 4th and 7th grade level. And the following questions were asked to determine technical quality. Was the message too long? Was the message difficult to read? Was the message clear? Does the message reflect more than one concept? And was the message effective and action-based? Questions asked for other characteristics included: was the message likable? Was the message offensive or unacceptable? Was the message credible? And will the message prompt caregivers to take action? So if we look here at, we have our own little chart, and this is, if we compare this to Hayden's matrix, it's much more simple. And what we wanted to do with showing you Hayden's matrix is the broader scope of injury and the prevention of injuries and the different components that are involved with that. Now we're going to look just at the what, so what, now what, trying to make it very clear, easy for anybody to use. And most importantly, for parents and caregivers. So if we look at the developmental stage of what can my child do, for example, my child is starting to roll around. So what can hurt my child? My child could fall from the change table. And now what do I need to do? I need to place my baby where they will not roll, or make sure that I hold on to them if they don't. My child is starting to put things in or near their mouth. So what is around that they can grab onto that can be poisonous to them? Now, I know we don't include choking in our different primary three focuses, but that can choke them as well. So these are the considerations we need to look at. And now what do I need to do I need to keep any medicine and vitamins and makeup and anything that can poison my child away from them where they're not going to reach it and put it in their mouth. My child is starting to pull themselves up to stand. So what does that mean? What can my child do? For one example, my child could get burned when reaching for hot things on the stove. So I need to let my child play on the floor and move them away from the stove, make sure pot handles are turned in. So if we look at this is kind of a blank statement. How can you apply this? How can you work with your parents, your clients, to see how it can be applied in all sorts of different circumstances? We have come up with 36 standard safety messages, which I'll show you a little bit later. But what I really want to emphasize is that this is a very adaptable framework, something that is simple, easy to use, and can be adapted to any circumstance along the way. So for example, a 12-month-old child is teething and wanting to gnaw on anything he can reach. A mother gives him the TV remote to keep him quiet. So at this stage, if we look at the developmental stages of a 12-month-old, what can my child do? He pulls himself to a stand. He can walk holding onto furniture, and he's cruising, and he's exploring things in different ways, like shaking, banging, and throwing. So not only may the mother give the remote to the child, but the child may also be cruising around and find the remote control, pick it up, put them in their mouths. What can hurt my child? Number one are the batteries that are within that remote control. It doesn't take much for the backing on that to come out and the batteries to come out for a child to swallow those batteries. And that can cause huge, huge injuries to that child. The buttons may also come loose if there are buttons and not the more electronic components of it, and cause a choking hazard. So what do we need to do to prevent that from happening? Placing the remote control well out of reach of the child and giving the child safe toys to play with. A remote control, a cell phone, is not considered to be a safe toy for a child. So what I've done is I've looked at some other scenarios that can be used that you can plug into the what, so what, now what framework. And this can be within the 0 to 36 month range. It can be older children as well, and looking at other injury concerns besides the falls, burns, and scalds, and poisoning. So a 4-year-old child has a home with a backyard and direct access from the home and a sliding glass door. What does that mean? What can that 4-year-old child do, and what is the huge concern with that? That child can open that door and go out to a pool area and have ready access to the pool and the water that's involved there. A 3-year-old child is in a home where there are 2 stories and there are low windows. What is the possibility there if those windows, if the child can easily climb to that window and if the window can be opened, and the possibility of that child falling out? And again, you look at what can the child do, what within the physical environment can be the risk for that child, and what can be done to decrease that risk for the child. If we look at a 2.5-year-old and family and friends coming with purses. People come in, they set their purse down on the floor beside their chair, and then it's immediately forgotten. That child, he's curious, wants to know what's in it. A 2.5-year-old can open a zipper or a clasp. What's in that purse? So always being aware of the possibility of risk for the child. And as we spoke later, we talk about risks and hazards. And at this stage, for the children, hazards, they don't understand hazards. They don't understand what can and cannot hurt them. And so we as the caregivers need to be one step ahead of them all the time to remove that hazard. So these are just some examples that you can see how the whole what, so what, now what framework can be used to look at what can your child do now? What's around that can create a risk for them, can possibly cause an injury, and now what do we need to do to decrease that risk and keep our children safe? I need to add that, and I alluded to this when we were talking about the Hayden's Matrix, that the social determinants of health certainly do have an impact on injury and injury prevention. And all of this needs to be taken into consideration when we are working with people and trying to work with them to decrease the risk for injuries. It's certainly part of where we are, where we live, the different challenges that we have for many different reasons can impact the risk of injury. Back in the late spring, we sent out an environmental scan asking people about what they do with injury prevention in the course of their work, and what were the challenges for them. Some of the responses included parents' perceptions of injury prevention, time pressures, the time pressures both on parents and caregivers and just rush and trying to get everything done, but also the time pressures for staff when they're working with families, because there's so many things that need to be addressed and covered and discussed. There's non-understanding of the real risks. And again, that's on the part of parents and caregivers, on the part of children themselves, and in some cases on the part of the staff. And not understanding stages of development and what the implications of stages of development are in relation to the risk for injury. It's important when we're working with families to know your community, to start to look at what are the challenges to injury prevention within the community and what are the facilitators that help us with injury prevention in our community. I think of when we look at the community, I'm going to go to a situation that's not within Ontario, but a number of years ago I heard a speaker, a physician actually from the pediatric hospital in Harlem, and they found that children were coming in because they were falling out of windows. Just the frequency was quite high. And so they went out into the community and said, how come all these kids are falling out of windows? And obviously it was because kids could open windows wide, could climb out, and out they went. And so they put in a whole campaign into place, working with city officials, building officials, and so on, to put window guards in so the windows could not be opened that wide. And the numbers of kids coming in who had fallen out of windows decreased considerably. So it definitely had an impact. And so it's not only working just with individuals, but it's looking at our whole community and what can we do in our community to keep us safer. A number of us have worked over the years, for example, as we have advocated for the use of for bike helmet legislation, for booster seat legislation, and so on. And that is working together as a community to decrease the risk for injuries. So as a part of this project, when they had done focus groups, they asked people, how can we deliver the message? With the 1 million messages in Alberta, all parents have to take their children to public health to get all the immunizations. And the messaging was delivered every time parents came in with their children. They received this injury prevention messaging. So they had ready access all the time. It's not the case here in Ontario. And so they were struggled, how can we communicate injury prevention messaging to parents. And one suggestion was through email electronically, and so an email messaging system was developed. So people can go to the website preventchildinjury.ca, and parents can register and say, yes, I want to receive an email messaging as a reminder to me. And again, when we're working with parents, it's reminders. All of us need reminding. Certainly when I've talked with Kelly, she says, yep, I forgot about that one. So it's having that reminder that, oh golly, our child is crawling around. We better get those poisons out from under the sink. So parents can go in, give their name and the age and their email address, the age of their children, the birth dates, and then they will automatically receive an email message at the appropriate milestones of their child with injury prevention messages for their child at that point. Now I will go back to this slide in a minute. This is an example of the messaging that a parent will receive. And so this one is for a child at 13 months. And again, Kelly had received this for her child. And this again is a reminder. It looks at the falls, burns and scalds, and poisonings. This actually would all be in one sheet. I had to split it in two for this presentation. And here's an example of one for 16 months. So this gives you an idea of what it is that parents are receiving when they sign up for this. Just going to go back. How do I do this? There we are. Okay, you will see here, this is the home page for the preventchildinjury.ca, and we have the parent login, and this is where they would log in. It's in the professional login. We have it now that's been changed, so professionals do not need to log in. But when you click on that, that is where all the resources are, and I will go through those in a minute. There will be, we're hoping to make some changes to this website and remove that professional login session to something else that will make it more accessible for everyone. We don't want people to feel, well, I'm not the professional, so I'm not going to go and look at these resources. So these are some things to come. Okay, I'm going to go this way. There we are. All right. When we did the messaging, one of the things that was looked at was the illustrations. Back when we first started looking at a million messages, Dr. Barbara Morangello with the University of Guelph looked at the illustrations that were used, and she said, you know, I really don't think these are what we want. Children were playing, they were happy, they were smiling. And so she did a small study looking at what is parents' response to different illustrations. And what she found is that if parents see illustrations where children are happy and smiling, the parent is less likely to read the message. Whereas they see one where a child is obviously in danger or in distress, then the parent is more likely to take the time and actually read what the message is. And so from that study, we then decided that the illustrations needed to show the child in dangerous situations or in distress. An illustrator was engaged in the Niagara region, and these are examples of some of the illustrations that have been done. All of these illustrations are available on the website. The project developed a huge number of resources. For something that happened over 2 years, they did a tremendous amount of work. Part of it is that they did a whole training strategy working with daycare providers. And what can they do to deliver the message to parents, and particularly looking at teachable moments. when is a good opportunity to communicate that message to parents? And on the resources, and when if you think back to that home page where it says professional login, and you click there, you will find the resources there, and these are some of them. One is the training manual for working with daycare providers and what can be done. This is a magnet that was done so parents can put this on their fridge, directing them to the website, and then a reminder, the whole what, so what, now what. And then there's the messages themselves. So these messages are either all in one chart, or you can get them as cards and flip cards. And the cards, a number of public health staff are using them, keeping them in their bags, and taking them with them when they're working with families. This as a quick reminder for them, a quick resource as to looking at the developmental stages of the child, and what are some of the things that need to be of concern and what can be done about it. All of these resources are available on the website and can be downloaded and printed as people want to use them. So that is available. There's a lot of questions. Can they order them through us? Unfortunately, we do not have the budget to be printing them and providing them, but certainly people are welcome to download them and use them in however you can. So we here at Oxford have a brief outline of some of the costing that we found, so we can talk about that later if you're interested. This is one resource that was developed within Oxford, and they wanted to be able to put something in a mail out to families to direct them to the website and also to the whole what, so what, now what concept. You'll see right here that this is actually a removable magnet, much smaller than the magnet I showed you in the previous slide, that people can take off. So this resource, if it's not on the website yet, it will be soon, and again can be reproduced. In Kingston has developed a home safety checklist, and you'll see here that they have included a blank area. This has been developed in Kingston, the KFLA, and people can put your own logos on there in terms of distributed by Oxford County Public Health or whatever. And I just showed you the one side, but there's two sides on this. It's not on the website yet, but will be soon, and it has just been translated into French. And I need to add that the message cards have been translated into French. The magnets have been translated into French, so we are working with that. And the French resources are also up. Sorry for that. Okay. This is a display that was done for the Best Start Conference last year, and it's actually housed at Oxford County, but was produced from the Ontario Injury Prevention Resource Centre. This is the graphics for this are not on the website, but if you want them, they can be accessed. My apologies. I'm almost at the end now. My throat is just about giving out. This is showing you the page for the Ontario Injury Prevention Resource Centre. And in this right here is the working group microsites. If you go there to the microsites, you'll find the Ontario Child Injury Prevention Committee microsite, and on there are more resources. And that is where you can find the webinar that was done last spring and where this webinar will also be posted. There's also a poster that Dr. Barbara Morigello did on the illustrations and a few other resources that are available. So that is open to you as well. So that is the end of our presentation. Oh, I also want to add, I forgot to mention that 3 videos were done as training videos, and they too are on the preventchildinjury.ca website.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was great information, and we do have a number of questions that have come in through the chat box. So I'll start by reading some of the questions in the chat box, and then we will open up the lines if anyone would like to ask their question over the phone instead of typing it in. All right. So a comment here from Cheryl. That's wonderful. I am a program supervisor for a licensed home child care agency. Is there the option for someone to present this in Ottawa to our providers, or is it a train the trainer type webinar where we are then able to go and present the information to others?
We're hoping that this is a train the trainer, that you can present it. And as I say, the resources are on the website, including the training manual for child care providers. Certainly by phone, we'd be very happy to provide support.
Awesome. All right, another question from Lynn. Will there be a targeting of grandparents in future work? This website would be great to have grandparents sign up as well.
Good thought. It's something that I think that the committee can further explore. Maybe we need to change it from parent sign in to parent, grandparent, caregiver sign in. We want it open as widely used as possible for everyone who has access, who works with young children.
That sounds like a fantastic idea. A question from Tracy. Can a home child care provider create a parent login for the children she has in care and therefore receive email updates?
Yes. Because basically she is just putting in the age, the birth date of the child. She's not giving any personal information. So that is her email address, and she would receive the email updates at the milestones for the child's birth date that she put in.
Awesome. That seems like an excellent resource. A question from Holly. Have the resources been distributed to health units? I was told that they would be, but haven't received anything as of yet.
Yes, they will be. We had a bit of a delay there, but the plan is after this webinar they will be sent out to all of those who attended the actual in-person workshops. They have already received their resources, and the additional ones will be sent out, we hope, within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, fantastic. So watch your mailboxes for those. A question from Munira. Do you have facilitators who go out into the community to present workshops on injury prevention?
This project is specially funded. There's special funding to do what we've been doing in the past year. Beyond that, there will not be funding for that. So, no, we don't have people who will be available to provide workshops. But again,
do you have any suggestions of other organizations or people that they could reach out to if they're looking for a service like that?
Not at this time. I think, again, we're hoping this is more a train the trainer, and that those who are on the line will then go out into their own communities to do this. That if you want additional support, we're happy to provide that by electronic means or by phone. but we're really encouraging people to go out into their own communities to provide this.
Perfect. And Munira, I'm not sure where you work, but maybe partnering up with some other organizations in your local area, the public health units, of course, and if there are any other injury prevention organizations or groups that might be interested in this, maybe all working together to facilitate some presentations might be easier than one person taking it on themselves.
Absolutely. And certainly the committee is there for support any way that we can assist and provide support with that. If there are additional resources that people feel that they need that we have not done, then that's certainly something that can be considered down the road. The unfortunate thing is a lot of it comes down to funding, that we just do not have people available that can go out and actually do workshops.
All right. So a question from Carolyn and a comment. First of all, she says, excellent presentation, and this has shown great movement in the project over the last 3 years. Smiley face. And then her question is, are you looking into other translations of other languages other than French?
At this time, we have not. That doesn't mean it won't happen down the road. And again, a lot comes down to funding, but then the additional is, what are the which languages do we put as priorities? We know there are so many that we would like to be able to do. So again, that's something that the committee will need to be considering.
Mm-hmm. So maybe if people have feedback on that, they could send it to you?
Absolutely.
All right, so if there's any feedback on languages that would be useful to have these resources translated into, please send those to our presenters.
But I need to add right now that at this time there's not funding for that.
Right. Also, any funding opportunities for translation, send it to our presenters. All right, a comment from Alicia. I really liked the link to physical literacy and the connection to the ELECT pedagogy. It is so easy to unintentionally restrict a child's opportunity to explore and discover when dealing with injury prevention. The clarification between risk and hazard is super helpful too.
I'm glad to hear that. That's great. It's a challenge, I know.
Mm-hmm. A suggestion from Lynn. The suggestion is to have a canned train the trainer outline developed so those doing the training would train in all the same manner.
As I say, there is the training guide there that is online and the teaching videos. There are also PowerPoint presentations that are on the website. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. So I think you'll find that if you go and actually look at those resources, you'll find that a lot of what you're looking for is already there.
Perfect. So everyone go and explore the website a little more.
Yes.
There's been a few more comments as well, just sort of reiterating how excellent this webinar was and how useful the information was, and also lots of well wishes to hopefully get more funding to continue the great work.
Thank you.
So now I'd like to provide the opportunity, if you have a question and you just prefer to ask it over the phone, sometimes it's a little quicker than typing it out, or if you've thought of another question in the meantime, please feel free to take this opportunity to unmute your phone line and ask your question. So to unmute your line, you dial *7. So please dial *7 now and just jump on and ask your question. So again, that's *7 for any questions. All right. Lynn was wondering, going back to the chat box, about how much time is needed to do the train the trainer.
Again, within the training manual that was developed, that time frame is there.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't remember exactly, but I think you'd find that you can do it quite easily within 2 to 3 hours.
All right, that's great information. All right, we'll give one more opportunity. If anyone would like to unmute their phone line and ask a question over the phone, please do so now. It's *7 to unmute. And I would encourage you, if you do have remaining questions, ask over the phone line because it seems like we are sort of wrapping up for today. So questions over the phone, one last opportunity, *7.
Hi, this is Manira. Just wondering if you want to connect with you afterwards, how do we do that?
I would say if you can contact myself, Kelly Vanderhoeven, at you can either use my my email or telephone number to communicate with me. So I'll just let you know what my email is. It's the letter K, Vanderhoeven, and I'm the presenter at the top for the spelling, VANDERHOEVEN at oxfordcounty.ca, or you can feel free and give me a call at 1-800-755-0394, extension 3425.
Kelly, would you mind putting those into the chat box for our participants? Just then they can see the spelling of your last name, because I know that can be a little tricky. So we'll just give Kelly a minute to do that. And I would recommend, if you want to copy down that contact information, do so right away, because once we end the webinar, the chat box will disappear. We will send out her contact information once more when we do the follow-up, so it's not going to be the only time that you see it, but if you are wanting to get in contact with her fairly soon, just make sure you copy that down right now. So Callie has posted it in the chat box, so just copy and paste and put it into your Outlook. A question here from Carolyn. Thank you so much for updating us on this resource. Just wondering how Health Units and Healthy Babies, Healthy Children's programs are embracing this compared to previous messaging.
We don't know how, we haven't received anything officially from Health Units. We do know that some Health Units are actively using it now. And as I said, I have done workshops over the past few weeks, and the representatives from some of those Health Units have indicated that they want to pursue this further and use it within their programming. It's still not definite with them, but there was certainly very keen interest.
Do you know which Health Units are using it and how?
At this point, I can only speak for Oxford. They have been using it for quite some time. Each of the Healthy Baby staff has a set of the cards. They go out, have them with them all the time when they go on home visits, and we're hearing from that staff that they love them and use them all the time. And as I say, they are the resource that I showed you goes in the mailings to all parents, encouraging them to go to the website and register for the email messaging. What we do not have right now, we're hoping to get incorporated in, is some means of being able to determine where people are from when they register. So we have a sense of who's, are people from Oxford registering? That we don't know. So we want to look into seeing if there's a way to include some means of identifying the regional area, so maybe the first 3 digits of the postal code. That's yet to be looked at. Like, we're hoping to look at that. Whether it will happen, we don't know yet.
All right, that's a great idea. Okay, last opportunity if anyone wants to unmute their phone line, dial *7. All right, so I think that will, oh, hello.
Sorry,
Just in the nick of time.
I may have missed this. The sound hasn't been great, but I just wondered if there was a timeline around the resources being distributed to health units.
We're hoping to get them out in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I think that wraps up our presentation for today. I think we've gotten to all of the questions. If you do have outstanding questions after the presentation, please feel free to contact Kelly at the information she's provided in the chat box. Kelly or Lorna, do you have anything else you'd like to say to wrap up?
It's Lorna here, and I'd like to thank all of you for attending today. And I hope that you find this whole framework of the what, so what, now what, to be useful, and that you can use it within your practice. The whole idea is to be able to incorporate it without a lot of effort and a lot of time commitment, so that it's easy to work with as you're working with families.
I echo what Lorna said. It is all the research has been done for you, and the tools have been developed for you to very easily implement within your own work environment and your practice. So we encourage you to do so, and if you do have any questions, please feel free to send them my way.
That's wonderful. Thanks again to our presenters and all of our participants. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.